Welcome back everybody. We're up at the beautiful Hat Head. We were here 2 years ago. I did a quick video when we were up with our Swan, and this time we're doing I wouldn't say off-grid, but a non-service camp in our Jayco Journey. And while I wasn't planning on filming anything up here, I thought it'd be a good opportunity to go through what's working and what's not. So come along and I'll run you through our thoughts so far. So we're up here camping with our friends that we were with last time, and they've done an upgrade as well. They've now got a swag hybrid camper trailer. It's an SET 16 Max, and it's really interesting comparing these two in that they're a very similar size, but they have a completely different operation depending on what camping style you want to do. And I'm thinking about doing some review and walk around videos on various caravans, hybrids and camper trailers down the track. So if you want me to do that, let me know down in the comments and we'll see what we can get organised. But while I'm over on this side, that takes us into the first little challenge we've had along the way. As you can see, it's roughly about 11 o'clock in the morning and our panels are located on the roof just up here. The one problem with this site is that the trees run along the street edge as opposed to being at the back. And we've really struggled with our solar during the day, and given we're on a non-powered site, that becomes a little bit of an issue, and it's a bit stressful when it's been a little bit cloudy, overcast, rainy. But on these good days, you want to get the charge in, and we haven't really been able to do that. So I ventured into town the other day and I ended up picking up a 200 watt solar blanket, which I have roughly wired in to the twin batteries which sit under the bunk here by running the cable through, and I've done a regulated supply onto the batteries. Now the J-Hub app doesn't particularly like that. I do need to do a modification down the track where we piggyback off the solar inputs onto the BM Pro located down under the bunks. But at this point, I haven't really got the electrical gear to do that. So we're just feeding directly into the batteries, which the J-Hub isn't picking up that we're doing. So the voltage is a little bit all over the place. But for now, it's just allowing us to get a decent charge in to power us through overnight, and more importantly, run our camp fridge on the other side, which I'll run through right now. Our first few trips in the journey, we didn't even take the camp fridge with us. However, we're here for a week, so we brought this along primarily to use as our beer fridge. Now, one thing I didn't think of when we first got here is I had this set quite low, as we've been using it at home and also been using it on powered sites. The problem there is that it was drawing quite a lot of power while it was running on all the time, trying to keep it cool. So what I've done is I've bumped this back up to around about 6 degrees so that it's not running super cold, and that's fine for the beer and drinks that you keep inside this. So if you are camping off grid, that's an important thing to remember. Don't run your fridge super cold, because it'll be trying to draw all that power out of your batteries that you really want to keep in there, particularly on these cloudy and overcast days. And it does become quite a stressful experience if your batteries are starting to draw down and you can't get them back up. As with most setups, we've got the ground mat here. I end up putting the sidewalls on only because we've had a little bit of wind and rain. It just provides that bit of protection. To be honest, we like to sit outside because it's been so nice when the sun does come out, but that does provide a little bit of protection at night time when there's a bit of dew around and stuff like that as well. But the other problem we've got with this particular site, which is managing it inside, is that there's a lot of grit and grass, obviously, that the boys walk in and out. So we've tried to address that by putting some mats here, but getting into the caravan is the most important bit. So one thing I did buy when we got the Journey was the muck mat, which we never used in the Swan at all. We just generally had a ground mat and the foam mats that you sort of brush your feet on before you went in. The muck mat is absolutely fantastic. It traps a lot of that grit, sand and grass before it works its way back up into the van. The second thing we've added is also the carpet onto the steps. Now these carpet mats are fantastic. They're provided by Caravanmods, and I've got a video coming up on all of this down the track. but what this actually does is that provides another layer of getting rid of the grass and grit before it goes inside. And more importantly, when you're stepping outside, it gets rid of that slippery surface you often get on your caravan mats. Inside, I've simply got a carpet mat from Bunnings, and it's got a white backing. Make sure you don't have a rubberized backing on the back, as they can leave marks on your floor. This has been fantastic as well, as that gets rid of the last little bit of grass generally, so it's not walked all the way in through the camper, because we know kids and boys don't like to take their shoes off, or if they do take their shoes off, they'll just run everywhere out on the grass and bring it all back in. The other advantage with this is it does provide just that nice little area underfoot next to our bed when you get off in the morning. It doesn't feel quite so cold and harsh. One other thing you'll notice, particularly in these months when there's a lot of dew and condensation around, is that all your tables will be soaking wet in the morning. We generally put them down under the awning, but we're still finding a lot of dew and condensation collects on the tables. And I don't have it with me, but just imagine, my idea would be to get a little window squeegee. You squeegee that off, just so you're not soaking all your towels to get that dew off in the morning. You can then quickly rub over with a towel, and that'll dry a lot quicker during the day. So there's a little tip and trick that I think I'll incorporate into our camping setup as soon as we get back into town, and I'll remember to get one. And now we get down to cooking. When we bought the Journey, we decided just to leave the barbecue at home. I've had this twin burner butane cooker for quite some time. To be honest, I just mainly used it before to cook pancakes. One thing I do want to add on to this is a full smooth top, so you can cook a few extra pancakes as you go. But it's quite good because it's got a little griddle area here, so you can cook your steaks and bits and pieces. But you can cook so many things on these butane cookers that I really don't think you need a barbecue these days. They're super light, they pack away nice and compact. You don't have to squeeze them through the door or find a little storage area. And most importantly, particularly here, we've actually moved our setup from the front door where we'd normally cook out to the back here, where you can cook and enjoy the outlook onto the creek area. And that to me is a really, really good thing. Another advantage of having these butane cookers is we've obviously got two. I've actually got three, but shh, don't tell anyone. Is that you can cook here, particularly when we're doing our pancakes or something like that, you can cook. And then the smaller one with the lid on top, we actually use that as a little warming tray, so you can put your bits and pieces in here. Noting it's usually windy and everything gets all cold, you can keep everything all nice and warm. We've cooked all sorts of things in this over the last couple of days. Last night we did a chicken curry, and then I did a frozen apple and rhubarb crumble in it, and they were fantastic. You cook stews, we did a roast. There's a multitude of things you can do. One recommendation I would make, particularly if you're out camping in the wind, is to get one of these wind guards. And again, I'm going to do a full video on this because I think it's quite interesting what you can actually achieve with these butane cookers. And to demonstrate, you don't necessarily need to pack a barbecue when you're on these trips away. Now we've got the awning tied down here just because there's a fair bit of wind around. Now to tie this down, we've actually utilised the Ruse tie down brackets, and they're working really, really well. They've got little carabiners so you can put your normal camping ropes on, and they do the job quite sufficiently. I actually bought these with the little solar lights, which is another video coming up in regards to security, but I found those solar lights failed within a few months. So I've been on the hunt for something else, and I think I've come up with the perfect solution. Now, so you don't need to leave your lights on, and you've got a little bit of light when you come back to camp, particularly if you've gone down to the club for a meal or done a little bit of a walk around, I've come up with this that I found at Bunnings. And it's just a simple little light. It's got a PIR motion sensor on there, and then it actually, instead of being solar, just runs off 3 AA batteries. And to me, that just keeps it all nice and simple. You carry a few batteries around, it hardly uses any light, and it stays on for 25 seconds at a time. It's got magnets on the back, so if you've got anything metal, it'll just pop on. And then it also comes with some double-sided tape and also the little nub on the back so that you can hook it on and hang it off somewhere. And obviously the challenge with all the composite caravans around these days is that there's hardly anything magnetic that you can put these on, but this is perfect. Just down on the side of the step here. So when you walk up to the step at night time, it comes on, you can see, unlock the door, jump in. Particularly for those with kids, you can quickly jump out, go to the toilet, come back, and this just goes bing, bing, and it's done. It really is that easy. You don't have to worry about sitting it out in the sun the next day to charge back up. As opposed to these motion solar lights that I was trying first, the only issue I had with these is they stay illuminated the whole time, kind of like a garden lamp, and then as you walk past they go to a double brightness. Where this does work pretty well, particularly if you've got a little remote set up for your cooking station, is that I've put a Velcro loop on the back and you can simply tie it up and have it pointing down towards all your cooking gear. Another outdoor lamp setup I find really good is this Ryobi lamp that comes in an L shape. So you can either flip it over and use it as a full lantern, say on a table when you're eating outside, or you can flick it around and use it as a work light. And this is particularly good over your cooking surfaces. You have that sitting off to the side and it fully illuminates the area that you're working in, and you can adjust it, move it around, and it hardly uses any power while you're out camping. I'll take a few batteries with me and that's more than enough to run any of the tools we need over a week or two away. And while we're out here, the front boot, I'm not really a fan of the small opening here. It makes it really hard to fit things in and out. We store most of our gear in plastic tubs just like this, which you can pull out, but it makes it really hard to reach into the ones that are inside the middle of the boot. So I'm thinking about getting a drawer system or drawer slide that's made by On The Go RV, and I think that will improve it quite a lot. Stepping inside, I'd say most things are working pretty well, to be honest. It's a little bit more compact in here than our old Swan, but there's a few advantages that go with that, which I went through when we did the walk around of this journey when we first bought it. These reading lamps with the USB charging inputs, I find have been brilliant. We store all our phones and bits and pieces up on this overhead cupboard. We use that as a little charging station and it works fantastic. The only thing has been obviously keeping the charge up to the batteries, because our panels have been under shade for most of the time. But I think I've worked that out, so now we can charge away and it's not so stressful. One thing I added to our bed just before we left for this trip away was a mattress topper. Oh my gosh, that has made such a big difference. It's obviously a little bit tricky dealing with the east-west arrangement of this bed. However, I found the mattress was so firm that when I was stuck over the other side, I really didn't get a good night's sleep at all. Mattress Topper has improved that dramatically. It's lifted it up a tiny little bit, and it's obviously made it a little bit more difficult again trying to fit the fitted sheets onto the mattress. However, we're going to go up a size. I think at the moment we've got doubles on, but now we'll strip all that off and we'll put the queen size back onto this, and that will work really well. That'll give a little bit of extra width where you can tuck it down the sides as well, because anyone with these east-west bed arrangements know it's extremely hard to tuck the sheets down in under the mattress, particularly if they're a little bit short. They always come out and you end up cold during the middle of the night. But the top is working great, so that's a big tick from that. While we're talking bedding, this is working all pretty good from a bunk point of view. The interesting thing to note between this and the hybrid next door is our bunks are actually slightly bigger and they're obviously more open as well. So that's been some really good feedback between the two vans themselves. And we started with both boys sleeping on the top portion, but Sam decided that he wanted to sleep down the bottom. And that's actually made a little bit of a difference to how we keep this clean and tidy inside and actually store all our clothes. Because like the Swan, we're still using these canvas bags that you get from Aldi and a few other suppliers as well. These are fantastic. Basically, everyone has their own bag with their sets of clothes in there. We then have another few odd bags with underwear or winter clothing and bits and pieces, and we store them in the cupboard down here. The one thing that has been annoying is obviously this ladder sitting down in front of the drawers. It makes it incredibly hard to access all your bits and pieces. So we've actually set this up so that the drawer with the medication that we're not going to access all that much is up the top. We've then got all our toiletries down the bottom where you can actually pull it out and grab your toothbrushes and bits and pieces that you need. And then some other bits and pieces in the drawers down below. I'm finding we're generally leaving the ladder loose, particularly during the day. However, for those that don't know, Zach dislocated his hip, I don't know, about 6 months ago, and he's now got a fairly inoperable foot, so we just have to be careful with him climbing up the top here that the ladder's secure and he doesn't fall down and hurt himself even more. We've also added some hanging storage to the robe unit itself, and that's pretty good just for storing and stacking all our towels and bulky items that don't fit into those canvas bags. We've added a bamboo chopping board that sits nicely over the top of the stove, and that's really handy in just increasing the bench space, given that we don't have a lot of bench space in these particular caravans. But the one thing that I thought I'd mention is the hot water side of it. because we're off grid and while we can technically fill the tanks up while we're here, I'm just doing an experiment to see how much water we're using. And it hasn't actually been too bad. But what I am finding is using the instantaneous hot water system, just like when you're at home, you get a lot of cold water coming through before that hot water comes through. And to me, that's a little bit of a waste. So you want to either collect that, or what we've been doing generally for cooking is just filling up the kettle, cooking it on the stove, tipping it in the sink, and it works pretty well, to be honest. And that is the simplest solution. Obviously, if you're having showers and you're out on the road, that is a factor to consider, in that the water coming through the van, through the system, going through the burners, obviously comes out cold and then gradually heats up. So you definitely want to have a bucket with you, particularly if you're really scarce on water. So you can collect that water and then maybe potentially decant that back into your tanks if it's all nicely clean and non-contaminated, or depending on how you actually go about your drinking water, which is another big point that we do that's probably worth mentioning here. Obviously, the water that comes out of our tanks we use for washing up and bits and pieces. We might boil it if we're making coffees and whatnot. However, we do carry around drinking water with us, and that's entirely what that is for. And that is a really good thing because it provides a little bit of water capacity. But most importantly, if the water in your tanks does get a little bit contaminated, you're not likely to get sick while out on the road. And then one thing I kind of miss when we're on a non-service site is the ability to plug in the pod machine and make a nice warm coffee in the morning. Now, obviously there's a lot of different options you can do, and I ran through them in a video we did a few months ago. However, this little 12-volt pod machine has been fantastic. You simply boil your kettle, pour it in, the coffee comes out into this little cup down the bottom, and then we usually put it into a taller mug, top it up with a bit more hot water, and it provides a fairly decent coffee when you're out on the road. Now, one little niggling thing that's probably more unique to our particular circumstance more than anything else is that this van came fitted with a little hook here, and it had the sign that's down there. We've relocated to the other side because the clock drove me nuts. But the point I'm trying to make is that we've got this little hook here that we now use to put our keys on. And because you've usually got two sets of keys, one for the vehicle, one for the van, I would definitely have two hooks here at the entry. But this is a real handy little spot where you can hang your keys up here, they're within reach, and it keeps everything all nicely organised. I just certainly have two hooks there, or maybe a few if you split your keys out. And that's another thing I am thinking about doing, is just having a second door key where you can take that around with you and you don't have to carry your big clump of keys when you go to the beach, for example, which is where I'm headed right now. Oh, and one thing while we're over here, and I'm sure this actually confuses a lot of people, is there's no labels on these switches. So I've actually bought these labels, which I will put on sometime during the trip, so that you know what switch does what. I've sort of memorized it, but you do get out of the train of thought and tend to turn on lights randomly all over the place trying to work out what does what. So I'll put a link in the description of most of these things I've discussed through here, but more importantly, these little labels, if you haven't seen them before, they are definitely a lifesaver to put them on so you know what switch does what. These overhead storage units work extremely well, particularly when you're first into the trip and you've got some extra groceries which you store up on top. It's really good just being able to put things up here. Michelle's got a brand new fishing rod here that we're going to test out this afternoon, but it does provide that little bit of extra storage while you're out on the road, particularly if you're staying for a few days somewhere where the roof's going to be up. Just remember to move all this stuff out of the way before you pop that roof back down. We actually use these overhead cupboards that lead into the kitchen as our pantry, so we have all our bits and pieces in there. It's supplemented by this cupboard down here where we put our bulkier items in. You can't do too much about this top flap because of the sink location. However, I am looking to put maybe a drawer conversion into this. I just don't know how it's going to work with the depth of the sink being so close to the front of this little flap. In the second drawer, we have all our cooking utensils. And in the third drawer, we have all our cutlery in a little container, which I'll show you shortly, along with all our foils, glad wraps and bits and pieces, bags that sort of fit in around that container. And then the bottom flap, we have a lot of cleaning products and bits and pieces that you don't access all that much. Under the stove, we've got all our first aid bits and pieces. And then under the fridge, we've got some frying pans, our toasters, bits and pieces that we might use off grid. And I just noticed some bike racks and firelighters as well, apparently. But for those that weren't aware, you can get these from Big W, Kmart, Woolworths, all those sort of things. It's a Sistema container that has the dividers in there for your cutlery. So you can leave this in the van, leave it in the drawer, or you can take it out to the table, take the lid off, and all your cutlery is down inside where it's nice and handy. So we take this in and out. If we're eating outside, you can take it outside, put it on the little fold down table, and then you got easy access to all your cutlery. And then you just bring it in when you're finished and put it back in the drawer. In the cupboards up above the beds, we've got another container with all our torches and headlamps in there. So they're in easy access and reach from the door as you enter. In this cupboard, we've got a 12-volt charger for our Ryobi batteries, plus other few bits and pieces, such as our Bluetooth speaker. And then this is a bit of a junk cupboard at the moment, but I will set it up as a bit of a charging hub and a place to put all your electrical bits and pieces when you're out on the road. At the moment, we have all our remotes and everything stored in there. Again, so they're in easy access from the door as you get in. When we're traveling, we put our outdoor Coleman tables up here, which is a little dinette we've got outside, and also the fold out table that we use for our cooking. I've actually swapped over to those because they're about half the weight of the ones that we used to carry around in the Swan. So that's another weight reduction thing we've done to compensate for a few other bits and pieces that we're probably adding along the way as well. I don't particularly like the storage under this bed because it's a real hassle lifting this up and down. So what we do store is our ground mat, our walls and everything under here that you're not necessarily going to access all the time. It's just get them out, pull them back. We also put bodyboards and bits and pieces under here so that they're always packed and stored before we go on a trip away. One little modification I do want to do is to fit a little strap or pull strap that comes out from under this bed. So you can actually grab it and pull the bed up and down, which is how our strap bed works at home with some storage underneath, rather than trying to get your hands in underneath, grab the frame and lift this up. So I'm going to do that as a little modification down the track, and I think that will make this area under the bed a lot more usable as well. And then the buffet itself, we have all our containers, plates, cups. Down the bottom we have full trays and all bits and pieces for cooking. So this is our crockery center, and then our pantry is sort of spread around in all the little hidey holes that go outside the main storage areas. Another great thing is actually having a freezer, but the huge fridge is great. And I do love that you can partially open and close the blinds for a bit of privacy. That's something you don't have in a camper trailer. You either have the curtains open or closed. But particularly if you get back from the beach and you quickly want to get changed, you can just wind the blinds up and then pop them down when you're finished. And so there you go. I just thought I'd do a little bit of a run through while everyone was down at the beach and show some of the things that are working, but more importantly, some of the things that aren't and haven't been working while we're away on this trip. The main thing is definitely that solar, so that's a little job to do when we get back. I'm going to run a full Anderson lead through to the front of the van so that it's finally all properly set up to connect the vehicle to the battery management system while we're out on the road. And more importantly, when we're in shady spots like this, we can simply plug some panels in, move them around, so you're getting that solar away from the fixed shade that you can't really deal with once you've booked that site, set up, and are continuing through your stay. So this video also gives a few sneak peeks to a few other videos that I have planned to do down the track, such as the butane cookers over, say, a gas barbecue. And I also had plans to do a full security video, noting that a lot of people are having dramas when they're camping and also securing their van. So I've got a whole kit of bits and pieces to run through some options that you can do while you're camping, and most importantly when you're storing your van, so that things don't get stolen. So stay tuned for those. They will be coming up probably over the next few months or so. But I've got to get back to the beach to catch up with the others. So as I always say, thanks for watching. Get out there, stay safe, have fun, and we'll catch you next time.